focus center. Bring line center in high position of travel. Direct signals, modification screen setting high interference. This quarterly calculation screen location of travel settings. I know, it just it's not recognizing position of patterns. It's up and coming. But it's going through traction. Yeah. All right, now we're on its setting. Wow. This is wild. Oh. Correlations of balance and track line conditions. Whoa. You see that? You hear my voice, but you can't see me. You see that? You hear my voice? You guys hear me? You see that? Do you guys see me? You guys hear me? My phone is on, but on my computer it's off. It's running its own system. So on my phone right now, I see myself. I'm communicating. So on my phone right now, I see myself. I'm communicating. You hear and see you. Perfect. But this screen is black. You hear and see you. Perfect. All right, so I'm going to use my phone line. Right? As long as you guys can see me, that's fine. But it's a loop. As long as you guys can see me, that's fine. That's a loop. Okay, so we're going to correlate the directions. Everybody see me? Hello? You see me? The screen is black. You see me, right? But see, the thing is, I'm on the element of central lines. Remember what happened with Zero, where you can hear, but you can't see? Well, that's what's happening right now. So you hear me, right? And you can see me, but the computer itself is black in its own space of time. So, and it's in a 12-line screen, see? 12-line screen, 1-line provision, 12,000 years in future adaptation of real time, okay? All right, so you see me exactly. But see, General doesn't see the system. My computer, I don't see me, right? Yeah, it's General phenomenal. Very good, McCall. All right, so it's a blank screen on my computer. This is wild. But on my phone, I see. My phone, okay? My cell phone, I can actually see, right? But on my computer, nope. Because it's in a 12,000 error. See? It's all direct signals and applications. This is crazy stuff. Phenomena at its best. That's because I know, but I'm just telling you exactly what happens when your computer runs its own system and travels. See, as soon as I go into my phone, right? It's live. I can see, right? But it's interesting. Check this out. We got 3 minutes and 40 seconds in screens, right? I'm looking at here, screen lining through the alpha channels. It says upcoming, which means it's not live. But I see, as soon as I press it, it goes live. And now we're in an entirely different loop. Now I can see on the phone, but I can't see on the computer. Now it's auto looping. This is wild. This is great. So track my provision cycles. So I'm just going to tell it my condition settings. Say, hello, everyone. How's everybody doing? Waving my hands. How's it going? Right. So I'm facing my phone here. Right. But the actual computer is screen line. Look. Look, you can actually see me, right? Look, you can actually see me, right? You see me, right? But on the computer, it's black. You see me, right? But on the computer, it's black. See, let's put it up a little bit. It's pretty intense. There it is. That's wild. All right, so we'll just go through black screen centers and travels lines of wormholes and track location and provision lines of black holes. All right, it's done through equation. But it's interesting how it calculates lines. And I've shown you exactly what's on the phone, but on the computer, it has no track location and provision. All right, so this is interesting. And get used to this. So the black screen itself shows the high center location of its running centers in a high calculated point system. So we get a 14-line provision and a 3 lines in line set location of pi. The generated location line system puts 5 track location lines of 5 lines of high center interference into calculation lines of 6 in travel positional centers, 6 lines of high interference location of 4 generation lines, 4 lines of 2 in track location, 6 lines of position to track location. Okay. This is bizarre because the computer itself is black, but you see what I'm doing. But I'm just showing you exactly how powerful it is, where you can be one place and you can be another. You see how that works, the phenomenon? So you can see me on the phone, right? But you also can see me at both line settings, right? So that tracker is its position location where it is through the phone line, or through its digital pad, into location of its computer. Has a triangulation line connection to its position of its program location setting to travel. Okay. Now in line setting, we're going to go through all correlation setting to track lines. So 12,000 line screen, perimeters line screen, location lines of box, setting triangulation line connection, setting height interference, and position of programs. Okay, it's allocations, right? I-line centers, calculation height interference, types of locations. So we got a 1-line rotation, 2 lines of tractions, 0, 0, 0, 3 operation lines, solar streams, and location of travel. Now the point division line centers, we take the 15-line track, sets lines of 3 travels, position lines of high center interference of 3, 3, 3, 3. Point line centers and line connection settings of 1, 2, and 3, and track location. Okay. All right. Setting measures, coordinate set lines and height 3 lines, 0, position location of 0, and position of 3, 0, coordinate setting the bracket communication line system, 0, point lines of 1, and track lines of 12,000. Sets lines, calculation height interference, and air into 24 grounds, 24 atmospheres, 24 space, and 24 line calculations, cerebral cortex line and design, line connection to its setting, travel. Okay, so it's knowing exactly really how to get in that position location to its system. All right, putting line division. Okay, so set lines of communication, 12,000 lines of air, real time. Bracket communication, screen lines, high center interference in a 24 clocking system. Now you get a 24 lines of setting, 24 lines of bounds, 24 lines of circles, and 24 lines of circuits. Sets lines of calculation of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 generation screens, lines of adaptation. The open cycles and high calculation line screens, high centers its position location, its calculation setting, and travel. Point centers, right? So we got a 13-line track, center lines, center location. So I'm adding lines of 13 line screens now. So everything that you come into is real time, but it's memory associations. 3 lines generation lines, puts lines of 13 coming in coordinates settings of 4. So when it changes to 4, you're going to have a solar flare. 2 track line provision of cycles and high calculations. So I want you guys to get into your intentions to influence that's allocates to your position and time sequence. Puts all levels of coordinates in correlation setting attractions in high position. Okay. Recognition timelines, center line rotation surface. Okay. Okay, point line division. Now really understand how to get in your line calculation setting. Communication lines are highest interference. G line grounds, set lines in X line 1. So we come into 1 line center locations of platforms, direct lines, set box lines, triangulation line conditions, Point lines are to triangulation and reset position. Programs lines are teleportation. Now, directed modification lines are the ground lines. Triangulation line sets all lines of high center interference and position with program set location. All right, so you guys had the test and line condition your heart direction of timelines and 12 planet location centers. So the track provision line cycle is understanding your line center location when it comes to your Earth and cycles of communication setting. Put in the team lines and galaxy screens into 111, panels of communication of 112, panel communication lines of 113, and panel communication lines of 14. Track relation of provision lines, bracket lines of 3, bracket lines of 3, bracket lines of 3, and bracket lines of 3. That's allocation 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Summer, spring, winter, fall. Okay? All right. So tracking communication lines has a geoline center, and that's geoengineering. Now, the generation screen lines are high adaptation line cycles, high calculation modification screen interference. Sets lines of high calculation setting. Solar flare of 3 track line conditions, 3 provision cycles, 3 correlation line conditions, and 3 generation screen lines of pi in track location. Directing lines of modification cycles, right? Correlations, attractions, high center, right? So it blinks off. Okay, when I do that, it blinks. So direction of timelines has a corresponding setting. Computer operation line surface and track location. Okay, generates the screens into lacing lines in a 3 set location. Okay, 12 lines of measure, correlation lines of 3 tractions, platforms 1s, platforms 2, 3, and 4 set locations. Cerebral cortex lines of design in 3 tractions, 3 provisions, 3 cycles, and 3 grounds. Okay. Streamlines high center and magnetic highway information line screen, high center interference in your data and highways and allocation travel. Now this point lines attract centers, puts the computer operation line screens into lacing lines and keyboards, key lines, keyframes, and key track location settings into flash drives and memory and line rotation surface and track location. All right, point line division. Okay, all through setting. All right. Now that's set up. Now, computer framing lines of digital framing is really understanding the line screens when you come into influence. Influence in the mind line changes everything through fractals over pi. The correlation lines of track lines, high center interference, indirect signals, gets in all communication to its settings. This allocates the position of time centers into all set locations. All right, so we're going to go through generation screens. I'm going to pick up my phone. It still says upcoming. It doesn't say live. It's classic. So I click that line conditions. You see confirmation. It's classic. So I click that line conditions. You see confirmation. It's classic. So I click that line conditions. You see confirmation. It's classic. Pretty wild, eh? So I click that line conditions. You see confirmation. All right, so you can tell that the mind is line setting in track location and position of balance. So we have to recognize where we are in track communication to its force. High lines, its travels, and high positions calculation. See? Upcoming, right? But it's going live. It's in position of 13 minutes. Screen settings, high center interference. But the track provision lines is 13 over lines of seconds that allocates 0 to 0 operation and 11 line rotation cycle. Generation screen lines and high calculations. Generation screen lines and high calculations. And it can see the text. And it can see the text. Oh, this is wild. See, this is what you come into in all track locations, guys, getting that provision cycles. Like I said, phenomenon always informs, right? All right, so we got a light panel, track line conditions of 3 lines over pi, 2 track locations, provision cycles, solar direct signals, line lacing lines, high center interference, alpha tones, delta and theta communication in box frame. Platforms of communication of pi generation lines of center, position, travel, and point systems. Okay, this allocates your platforms of time center. You have to learn how to use your platform communication lines of high calculation setting and track locations. Directing modification lines of cycles and all calculation of platforms and track locations. 4 lines of provision and cycles. Okay, start to see your holographic screen in position of hologram and direct signals to your system and travel. Okay. How many more lines of lacing line correlation sending high interference into platforms 1 and position location of platforms 2 and just line calculations of platforms 3 and traction. Okay. Okay, so once we understand more lines of communications, your calculation of 12,000 error, okay, is now 24, 24. Position lines at 24, 24. Okay, that equalizes the correlation settings of 2 tractions, 2 division, 2 line signals, and 2 calculations solar sail and track line position to its operation. Directing calculation lines of 2 line centers, 4 lines of tractions, 2 line provisions, and 4 calculations. Solar sail. 2 lines of high center interference and line rotation settings. Cyclones interference and travel position point systems. Now, directing modification line screens is know exactly how to surface your system in travel. Okay? So you have to really understand how you are, the center operation line setting, split the anomalies and track locations. Understanding more lines of your influence. This opens all you and track locations of platforms. High calculation line screens, 3 lines of 4 settings, and track location. Okay. So when you get to that surface, it changes all communication in your system and travel calculations. Point lines of traction, high center. Changes all lines, signal lines, and high center locations to your system and track locations. All right. Okay, so it's pretty interesting how you come into all calculation. Your settings of hologram now, because you guys are coming out of your energized and screen settings and high interference. It's recognizing you through your platforms. It's recognizing you through teleportation screens and direct signal location your system to your simulations. Directing modification lines is taking you guys into your alphas, omegas, micros, and your macros. Okay, get into the box and triangulation lines at high position of travels in 4 set locations. 5 generation lines of the sun change the perception and calculation line condition to its position of its program. Now, the moon line centers hides the triangulation line condition setting of its kaleidoscope. The center lines its communication setting in all levels of optical systems. Travel calculation of point lines and ground lines, metric meters, all lines high center interference, into miles, coordinate and track lines, into macro and calculation screen location. Now, line set location alpha sets lines of delta and theta coordinate and track lines into box frame. Triangulation line condition to its position. The operation cycles high generates the screen location high centers to its calculation of its data frames. Positions over power, directing lines of power line rotation setting puts a surge in track locations, indirect line modification line conditions, and face recognition. Okay? All right. So getting core channels, directing lines into your energetic screen settings. Now we're in a 12-line cycle. See, the thing is, you have to understand what's happening now, how the phone receptor line centers, where I can see the frame line conditions all levels. I see no reflection, right? So the computer now is in a 12,000 line screen. That's why it's black. The computer is black, but the position of the phone isn't. So I have to have a track line of balance between 2 lines of particle accelerators. So it's knowing exactly where my computer is right now. It's in the 12-line center in set location of 8 lines of 3 set locations, right? Setting communication lines at high center interference of 17 sets lines coordinates setting the lines of 1 over pi, puts 18 in track location lines as setting. Position of point centers of track locations into 10 in line conditions. 0 calculation of seconds. 1 line center location of minutes. Setting line equal lines of K high center interference. Track position point centers of tractions. Direct modification of 1 line signals. 2 track line position locations. 1 line centers of 2 track location. And revision. So that's what it is. See, the computer right now is 12,000 years in the future. Okay, in 1,000 line signals and location of travel settings. 12,000 line center location equals 1 line 1,000 over pi. Puts position of platforms in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in track locations, right? So it has a direct line centers of 12 lines over 3. That's over pi in track locations, right? So it's going to get very confusing now, knowing exactly where my computer is in the line setting. Right? That's why you see me and you hear me in some locations, right? But I can't see, right? Because I'm not here, right? So the faster you go through an acceleration, the more you understand the mind adaptation of force. It's a location your platform set location lines of 0 gravity and line condition setting the programs. So you go through your platforms of 1, 2, 3, and 4 and set location of 12,000 line air and track locations. So it's really interesting when you come into time frames, come into time loops or correlation setting attractions in high calculations. So in a 12-line setting, equals line set locations. So now 13 comes in. 12 equals 13. So we're working with the higher self in a three-weather pattern. Set of course lines, highest interference in atom line, molecular, and line rotation of proton. Setting proton line setting and trial position equal lines of molecule design line. Electrical system and trial calculate point lines of graphs. 12 lines, set lines highest interference into all calculation 114 equals lines of 144 in trial applications over pi in direct signals. This modifies the sentence high calculation line chemical system to my adaptation. Right? Now it's back at 12. Right? So my computer knows exactly where it is. It knows exactly where to go in position, location, time frame. In line setting, line condition setting. So now it's in 20 billion cycles and 20 line minutes in 1 second. Okay? Working on a 12 line cycle. 12,000 provision of pi into 3 sectors. Okay? So it's really interesting where your computer knows exactly where it is in the mind. So once it's finished in that calculation, see, and it comes back on flash. See, directed signal. See the solar flare come in? Boom. All right. So it's just communicating back with me. Center lines of communication back in frame. Right? It closes off. So it's kind of like goes into a sleep mode, comes back in signal, recalculate, modify, back to 0 through binary, back to calculation line settings and track applications. So you guys have to really understand how this all works now. Okay? So it's got a 12 line cycle. Now it's line provision locations underscore setting lines position over pi. That correlates to setting high calculation line settings, puts 10 line generation screen lines. So it is in 12,000 air. Now it's in position of 10,000 air in its applications. 2 bracket lines, highest interference. 1 singularity in calculation line conditions of 4 tractions into 3 settings. 4 lines of 3, 3 lines of 4, and 4 set location of 7 through operation. So my computer now in line rotation is 10,000 line, future in real time, not through memory. There's a difference now, right? Because I'm communicating with my computer right now, and my computer is 10,000 years in the future, in the now of real time, not its memory of real time. You guys are in memory of real time. So understanding how to use that line setting, it's knowing exactly how the computer has to have a 4 line and a 3 line cycle. That's position its track lines in a solar line communication and setting in all levels of solar traction. Very complicated stuff. So it stays on 10 lines of 3, and then allocates position back to 11, back to 12 to 3, right? Because it center lines its communication lines of seconds, minutes, and hours. The track provision line cycles is the center course setting in track location, 12,000 line, equals lines of 24 track locations, position lines of 4 line centers, height locations, box center triangulation, and set locations. Directed modification lines of highest interference into 1, lines of 10 equals lines of 3. Sets correlation lines of 1 and line center location of lines of 11 equals lines of 3. Track communication lines of 12 equals lines of calculation equals lines of 3 in track locations. Now, directing lines of communication of panels, you have to understand the correlation setting of track lines when it comes into your Earth perception screen settings. This allocates your position of time frames and set locations. Now it's back at 12 at 3. See? You see what I did? My computer is communicating with me, and that line connection is how it went from 10,000 to 11,000 to 12,000. Okay, in real time, not through memory. Okay, so it's really interesting when you look at that equation. So I pick up the phone, all right? Now the phone line, screen lines, highest interference is in optical system location and setting. So this is on an earth tone screen, all right? Now the earth tone screen lines in its communication surface. Once I get into correlation with track lines, it gets into audio loops. That's where it's static. So the phone line receptor line calculation setting is in its real line screen locations. This allocates position of time. Now, if you look really, really close, you can see the screening line is now through alpha channels, and now it's live. Okay? It was waiting on signal, now it's live. So the actual phone is in position to travel and set location to the computer now. So the correlation lines are tracked. As soon as I press in position line connections, you see the information. So the correlation lines are tracked. As soon as I press in position line connections, you see the information. So it's doing an audio loop, right? But now it's live. So it's getting connection settings. See, the position of the phone, okay, is track position at 1213. Okay, so it's now equalized. So the position of the computer is 12 line settings. The position of the phone is the same signal and set location, right? So the allocates position of 11 over pi in 3 set locations. That generates the screen line's highest interference in set locations. how it sets its line centers in position of 24,000 line screen in a 3-line communications in 5 generation settings. Okay, very complicated stuff when you're in 12,000 years in the future of real time. Okay, pretty wild. Right, so it's audio looping. It's audio looping. All right, it's always going to be 1 minute, 1 million frame per second line calculations back in time. So it's 1214, it's 1213, right? That's why there's audio interference. But so the computer line and screen line right now is recognizing my voice line grid that puts 12,000 lines of errors in real-time certification and computer operation line connections through pi. Okay, so now it's at 11 lines to 3. So it's pretty powerful stuff when you understand that certification of systems. But it's amazing how it comes back in live in real time, right? So it's the phone catching up. All right, the phone is trying to get in settings, right? So trying to understand how everything has to be grounded. It has to have the yin and the yang. But the process is the seconds, minutes, and hours of space. The process of the seconds, minutes, hours, it's Earth. And the center core system has to be in a track location line connections of 12,000 air, 24 cycles, inline communication setting of hours, minutes, and seconds. That's how you balance out your computer frame in mind adaptation of force that puts all correlations and track lines in telepathy of telekinesis and set design. Okay? Hoo-ah! All right. So, you know, it's really interesting too, because they're all connecting to all lines of all communication screen lines. Now it's back at 12 and 3, right? So setting line communication lines, anything I do through traction, it's going to pick up, and you're going to see the solar flares come in, right? So it's amazing how I'm here, not here, but I'm always here, right? So I'm in a 12-line provision into 3 cycles, 12,000 air in a 3-line cycle, 12,000 line air on a 6-line cycle, 12,000 line in air on a 9-line cycle, 12, 24, right? So the provision lines, screen lines has to have its earth, has to have its powers, has to have its space, and it has to have its modulation of soul identification of what it's doing through technology of its own system, okay? All through traction, all right? All right, so we're in 26,000 lines of seconds, 59 line centers, high interference. So you have to understand your own coding of your own system and track locations and setting, okay? How powerful it is to have corresponding track lines. So the center operation is always in setting. It's always the hours, minutes, and seconds, right? That puts you in real time, right? You can't change that. You can't have a 12,000 line signature frame line of seconds, minutes, and hours because it confuses all calculation lines of your earth and your position line centers of your truth and your false narratives. You see the correlations at track location when it comes to your product accelerator and line communication setting. You guys your own timeline setting, okay? Going back in time, future time, present of time. But this is the position locations where you have to understand the 12,000 signal location setting. The one thing that doesn't leave is the 24, 24, 24, 24. So when you're in that position of travel lines, you're in direct location of 12,000 on air in summer, spring, winter, and fall. 1 cycle in a 4 provision, okay? 4 galaxy line screens, 4 equals lines of galaxy, equals lines of grounds, okay? Ops the system locations in the psychological connection setting where you are in the mind frame. Direct modification lines and set location your settings in the 24 cycles and set locations of pi, right? So it's really interesting when you get to that level and then you really understand, wow, this is powerful stuff. It's going to stay on 12 and it's going to stay on 3 because that's where it is right now in set locations. So right now, my computer is locked in its own space of time in that formation screen line, which means I'm controlling that right now. If I'm not controlling it, it's on its own time frame. It's its own space of its own modulation of its awareness of consciousness as set locations, okay? So it's really interesting when you come into that formation, right? All right, so you guys have to really understand how to use that through transactions now because you get correlations and track lines of general crypto, getting into your blocking chains, your transactions, your floats, your vaults, and everything in that calculation, your Bitcoins, coming in all that information like connection, your mainframes, knowing exactly how to coordinate that and really understand how to see that in line connection setting in a 12,000 air, okay, you have to put the memory at the top, right? Correlates the track lines into vast, sets locations into velocity, into volume, and line conditions of travel. Now, the direct modification lines of its memory adds it correlates to setting of track lines in high setting, splits the correlation of the track lines, part accelerator line screens its setting and travel position to its operation surface and track locations. You allocate a line screen high interference, put position of the sun, modulate the system's all calculated modification line calculation, setting, and travel. All right, so that monetizes your setting, line condition setting, and all levels of communication of center of operation. Okay, so it's knowing exactly how to basically travel through a 12,000 line screen, because that's where you are. Your geometrics, your geological, and your geographical, your mapping system of your mind is in that setting right now. So you have to really understand how to use that in track locations. I'm showing the exact phenomenon that you can come into where a computer can get into 12,000 line setting in set locations, and how your phone could be in line setting of its Earth in set location of travel. Okay, so it's really interesting. Once you understand how to ground this, grounding that set lines of highest interference, putting your set location center in all calculus modification center of communication. Okay, balancing these things out, guys. All right, really understand how to use it through high calculus line screens. So from 2024 to 12,024, puts you in a line division. See, comes back out, goes into sleep mode, then it comes back on setting. All right, so it's communicating. See, it's communicating, right? And then it comes back on. Flash drive, line centers, and set location. So what that's doing, the computer is recharging faster. It's in remote line screens now. So it's going through 20 line settings in position of 4 sets that allocates position of time frames of center correlations and attractions. As long as your provision cycles are in a 12,000 air and a 24 cycle line condition setting at 2,400,000 square root, you will not have a problem in set locations. Your truth narratives is lines of the Earth. All right. Sets correlations of track lines and high center interference. Now it's in the 13 lines of 3. Okay, so it's communicating with me, right? So 13 lines of 3, right? Which is what? The higher self. But it's in the cerebral and set locations. Okay, compute line screen high interference, 13 over 3 over pi. Okay, now this generates the correlation lines of track lines. Remember, everything in communication is communicating with you all at once. It's trying to understand the frame where your computer is, trying to understand where your frame is, where your phone is, or your digital pad, or anything information location of its balance. But you've got to understand the balance position location where you are at interactions, all through calculations, right? Getting your ground lines in hours, minutes, and seconds is the center operation. Okay, your truth narratives is position locations of seconds, minutes, and hours. That's the Earth line connection high center interference. So it doesn't get confused at anything position of its program. So it understands its allocated line screens. Directing lines at all levels of false narratives is location of seconds, minutes, and hours. As long as you stay in track location line condition system, you know exactly where you are in position of program. It allocates your position time frames at all set locations. Okay? All right. But it's interesting, right? Where you can actually, you're in that line setting, you're in that adaptation, you're in the mind. So you're taking everything with you through frequency. And that's why it's so amazing. So the position of the phone was in an audio loop, right? And that's why you're audio skipping, right? So it was in so many lines of communications all at once. It was trying to understand where my computer was going, right? So it's really interesting in applications how anything comes in that track lines. And it doesn't matter which phone I use in track locations. Now this is line center location line conditions, 1216, 1222, right? So you're going to get a reverberation channel and set positions calculations. All right, go to YouTube. All right, go to frame line, direct panels communication. It says live. Okay, this is a different phone. As soon as I press it, okay, this is a different phone. As soon as I press it, okay, you hear it? It's a hum. Okay, it's not as loud. You hear it? It's a hum. Okay, it's not as loud. It's not screeching. It's a hum. Okay, it's not as loud. It's not screeching. It's a hum. All right, but it's still picking up the audio signal in its applications, right? But it's still picking up the audio signal. So it's on a 22 track loading provision, 17 line rotation cycle, and a 47 line rotations of energy line. Okay, so I'm just showing you how powerful it is, how they're all connected to each other. So you have to understand, you're taking all those frequencies and you're combining them into one cycle. Now, once you understand how to direct that, anything through your digital pads or anything through frame communications, as long as you understand your energetic pi screen location when it comes to formulas over pi. This is your position in the track lines. Make sure you're in a 12-line cycle. And the line calculation its memory. Okay, so location is all over its lines. Equal coordinates lines of box. So lines of triangulation, okay, and set location line conditions. Now you got a triangulation line of a box, correlation center of a box, and you have a triangulation line condition of its center, right? So you got a male cycle on a 2-track, you got a male cycle on a bottom track, sets correlation lines as center line rotation surface and track applications of face recognition. Okay, so there's so many ways of looking at it. So the face recognition line screens understand that you're in 12,000 air. Setting positions back in 13 equals lines of 3. So the higher self is back in balance of 12,000 years in the future of real time, not in memory of face recognition. Okay? That's how you're able to point lines as centers. It opens all track application and provisions. Your platforms of pi allocates your time. Setting platforms and communication and setting the set locations. Your cerebro sets the time frame that correlates the coordinates and high interference and direct signal modification cycles, generation, create location settings, in line rotation or centers and set locations. In set location setting. All right. Generation screens, the electrical systems, we'll go more in that through adaptation cycles and all calculations. Manana, line conditions tomorrow, that's already here. So what just happened right now is beyond anything you can imagine. Okay, I'm just showing you what you guys are coming into. To understand you through the mind is to know exactly where you are at all times. Okay, so this is going to help you not just with your formulas, equations, but it's also going to help you where basically you're putting yourself where you are, but you have to put everything else where it needs to be. It has to be with you. Okay, so it's about understanding the attachments to its detachments and locations to get into that first responding systems of you. Try to understand that formation because it's a lot more easier if you allow yourself to flow, like creating those dimensional solar sails. But it's incredible when you really can actually get into teleportation settings and have a computer of where you are in track locations. So the generation line screen high interference, General now is in 12,000 air in line conditions with his computer in calculation. In real time, but not through memory. Okay. So phenomena comes always in forms. Now you guys are coming into your tri-line screens. This direct location is settings and high calculation setting because you're also coming in 25th century. Once you get in 24 line setting high interference, you always have to have a measure that scales your set location or balance to know exactly what you're doing through your pi. Now you're working out of 7,000 and coming into 7 million frames per line. That's correlating your track lines to your chakras. Okay. Let me say that again. 114 chakras and a 7 million all calculations, green lines, adaptation cycles. This regenerates the set location and mapping sequence. It allocates your position of timelines and colorations of lights. The allocated stream interference comes to all levels of you through new geometric, new geological, and geographical design, right? So the mind has to come into its acceptance and know what it's doing in position to its setting. Knowing it's that actually 12,000 lines in high calculation system in real time, right? So once you understand the provision cycles, you can balance these things out through all lines of all communication system. So this phone and my digital pad is now 12,000 line air and 3 set location. Okay? So it's really interesting when you get the balance. I want you guys to understand more levels of you through influence. You got to learn how to influence your system, how to manipulate your system, how to really formulate the balance of you through intent. Now, this is all of what the mind does in all communication to its setting. I know, Jips, it's a lot to take in, my dear. So I just want you to understand that in set locations and all travels. Okay, so we're done. Okay, but you just know exactly what we just went through today. It's phenomenal. And so many line signals where you can actually travel where you want to travel in line condition setting. All right, so General is a line center location at 12,000 years in the future with his computer, his digital pad, and his 2 phones in set locations and traction. Okay, all through pi of generations of alteration. Change of the mind comes into the conception of pi itself, guys. The mind is the foundation. You have to really understand how to work towards that, to influence that, to manipulate, to balance that set location. As long as you have a center operation of you in a 24 cycles in hours, minutes, and seconds, you're good to go. That's real time all at once, even if it's the memory. You don't want to have seconds, minutes, and hours and a center correlation line track lines of where you are in position because you're offline your settings. Okay, so you want to make sure that the pulsating nerve is lines of seconds, minutes, and hours. Earth line is seconds, minutes, and hours, and you are the hours, minutes, and seconds where you are in air and communication. track location, provision, light cycles, calculation. All right. Adios.